Well, I'm so delighted to have you on this interview, Panache Desai. We are incredibly excited to welcome you to our community next month. And thank you for giving us this time to talk about what it is you're going to be bringing with us.
It's great to be with you too, and I'm looking forward to being with everybody in person and sharing the deeper insights and experience of you are enough. I think it's such an important time in human history, and the perfect time for all of us to remember that at our essence, we are connected to this divine source and potential. And that when we connect with it, we're able to all of a sudden return to harmony and then reverberate or emanate that harmony out into the world around us.
Absolutely. So I've gotten to experience your work firsthand, and just very moved by it. I've been following your work for several years, but many people in our community may not know. Could you give me a little bit of background about how you came to be this teacher and this facilitator of this work on You Are Enough?
Well, I'm just as surprised as everyone else that I'm in this position. I'd just like to start with that. I was born into a deeply spiritual family. My grandmother raised me for the first 5 years, and I was raised in an environment of prayer and worship. And as we know now, what happens in the first 5 to 7 years of your life becomes deeply imprinted inside of you, especially if it's done repeatedly. And so for me, this environment of prayer and worship and devotion was my home. And I just flourished and thrived in that setting. And then, of course, as we all know, life happens. At some point, we stop feeling safe. And at that point, we begin to create this facade or this ego or this identity. And we pursue this belonging, this ever elusive belonging that's a moving target. And subsequently went through all kinds of things as a part of my journey, which I've outlined in the book. And about tender age of about 21, got to a place where I realized that I had to get back to that feeling that I had had as a child in that meditation room. And I sat down with my mother and said, "Mum, I'm living a lie. No part of what I'm experiencing right now is authentic to who I am. I'm doing my degree in university to please my grandfather. I'm doing everything else to get some sense of approval outside of me, and I'm just miserable." And of course, that's what happens. So we go from this connected essence where we are one with this divinity and one with all of life, to then all of a sudden living in separation. And then the best that we can do is suffer. And suffering just happens at varying levels and varying degrees, depending on how successfully we've managed to play this egoic game and accomplish materially. But what I've realized is that we're more than units of production, and we're more than units of consumption, that who we really are is units of divine expression. Wow. And so in my ability to go and live like a monk for 6 months, I was able to start to unpack what in my culture they call samskaras, which are impressions in the subconscious mind and in the deeper vibratory field of the individual. And as these samskaras began to be cleaned and lifted off of me, which is what happens when you chant in Sanskrit, do meditation, pray, do yoga, follow any kind of spiritual practice, really what you're doing is scrubbing the subconscious of all of these imprints on behalf of yourself and also your lineage. And so this journey of this accelerated kind of awakening and remembrance began for me. And all of a sudden, all my gifts and sensitivities that I had as a child came back. So when I was a kid, I'd sit next to people. I didn't say anything or do anything. And just in being in my presence, if they had an issue, all of a sudden it would be resolved. And I wasn't doing anything, and I just thought it was weird. So somebody would sit next to me and just start telling me the whole life story and how much they hate themselves and hate their life and how miserable they are. And then they would experience all the emotion around that. And then they would get up as what I would call as a child, sparkly. And again, it was just bizarre to me that this was happening. So once I had gotten to a place of going through this journey and getting back in touch with that essence of that meditation room and that connectedness, that oneness, I began on a deeper exploration. I became very curious about my destiny, why I was here, and what my greater purpose in being in the body was. And it led me to one spiritual teacher after another, one healer after another, one thought leader after another. And it was kind of this journey that we're all on. And it culminated for me in an evening where, in sheer frustration, I said, if I am indeed here to be a messenger and to do something, then I have to experience who or what God is. Because in the absence of that experience, there's no way that I can look at a mother who's just lost her child in the eyes and tell her that there is some innate strand of perfection in this experience and that she's going to be okay. She's not going to do it. And as I began to become more unruly and more unrelenting, I started to just experience wave after wave of energy moving through me. And eventually I got to a point where I just had this experience of this infinite presence.
Wow.
just this absolute infinite vibratory field of potential. And the feeling associated with this was the word love, but beyond love. It's not any human definition of the word at all. It's just this vibratory emanation and pulsation of just this essence and this feeling of just euphoria for no reason. And it just went on and on and on and on and on. Needless to say, this experience clarified a lot for me. It helped me understand who I was, what was happening through me. And it also helped me understand that there are no barriers as it relates to the divine. The divine really is this infinite presence, and in its core, it's love. And we as human beings, as finite beings, are trying to relate to this infinite presence in whatever way we can, right? And we're kind of fumbling through it. But really what we're doing is trying to translate infinity uniquely. And that happens through the human heart. And so after this experience of remembrance or profound awakening, I was just in a state of bliss for about 6 months, and was getting used to kind of embodying it and integrating it. And people had heard what had happened to me, and they would come to see me. And just like when I was a child, they'd sit with me, and all of a sudden, whatever they had going on at the surface level of life, relationship, finances, health, work and career, whatever that is, would just begin to find resolution. And I wasn't doing anything. And of course, now I've gotten older, I've relaxed into it, and have subsequently written a couple of books about it now, and have a deeper awareness and understanding of what's actually happening and what our potential actually is. And so that, in a nutshell, is how all of a sudden, outside of the fact that I'm Indian, I ended up being a spiritual teacher. So that's that.
That's great. So you described the experience as being love and beyond, and I think I have a question that I want to ask you about. What was the emotional content of that? You said the word euphoria and bliss. Is that so profound happiness? Did you have any other response to that moment of the waves and waves of infinite reality?
It's so hard to describe it because it's such an all-inclusive experience that there's no language for this state of being. As we evolve, and the higher and higher we go in our evolution, and as our consciousness expands more and more and more into alignment with that greater I am, that being that we are, the more language just becomes useless.
Right.
And we realize the futility of language and description. And of course, as signposts and guides, language is great, but after a while, we get into this place where there's just no language because the experience is just so overwhelming and so all-consuming, because not only was this presence outside of me, but it was inside of me. And in that moment, I was shown very clearly that this is who everybody is, by the way. Like all of you that are watching this is who you really are. You're not the pain, you're not the trauma, you're not the story, you're not the words that were spoken over you, those limitations. Who you really are is this infinite field of presence and love. Like this is your essential nature. And so from that experiential state, I realized that we have compartmentalized what God is. We have put God into a box so that we can understand and rationalize God. However, actually, there is no way to actually describe what God is. So when Oprah asked me to describe God, I couldn't, because any language that we use to describe what God is becomes another limitation that we've placed on infinity. So what I can say to you is that as much as it's hard for me to articulate what that feeling is, I can't wait to share it with you when I'm with you in person. I can't wait to give you a glimpse of that and to allow you to access that in your own heart, because it happens through our heart. Our heart is the hub of all sacred places. It's the place where the love of the divine and the love of the individual merges. And at that point, our life becomes the excuse through which God loves its creation. And so I can't wait to share that experience with everybody and to support them in recognizing how loved they are and how enough they are.
Wow. I wish it were today. I'm so moved by that. So tell me about the book, You Are Enough. What is the content of the book?
So the book came about after probably the hardest 5 years that I've had in my entire life. Everybody kind of saw the Oprah interview and then were able to get Discovering Your Soul Signature. But shortly thereafter, Jan and I had discovered that our second set of twins, Celeste and Leonardo, that Celeste actually had a congenital heart disease. And so about 3 months or 5 months into that pregnancy, when you can do that first round of ultrasound screening, we were informed that she probably wouldn't make it through the pregnancy. And that even if she did, she would probably need palliative care immediately thereafter, or intense medical intervention throughout the course of her life. And so I went from literally being on top of the world, you know, Oprah, this huge book deal, you know, all of a sudden having this wonderful access to people that I had never had the pleasure of loving before, to now having death literally come and pay us a visit. And she spent 18 months in the hospital, had 5 open heart surgeries, and flatlined for 8 minutes. And literally, as they were on the verge of putting her on ECMO, which is an external breathing apparatus, life support basically, she decided to come back into her body. And after 18 months, she got her heart. She had her heart transplant at 18 months old and is now 5 years old. And we have been on this incredible journey with her. And what I will say is that this incredible, courageous soul came in to have this experience, not only because she had an agreement to resolve whatever she had to at the physical level of her heart, but because she helped us all correct our own heart defects.
Oh, wow.
And she came into my life at exactly the point when all of a sudden everything was about to take off and everything was about to explode. And she came in at exactly the right point in my life to remind me of what's important, what matters, and how valuable time is. And that ultimately, all of those things are great. However, they are not the be all and end all of what we should be moving toward. So this book came about as a result of that experience. And of course, as any of you that are there have gone through suffering or are hearing this have gone through suffering, the reason why we suffer is to humble us so that we can receive the help that we need. And in that moment, not only did she help me really get clear about who I am, why I'm here, and what I'm living for, but she also helped my mother, who had had a stillborn baby girl before she had me, move through that trauma that she had been carrying inside of her. She helped my wife, Jan, whose biggest fear was of losing a child, move beyond that fear. And she single-handedly allowed us all to grow together, because as crisis happens, the tendency is either you grow apart or you grow together. And by the grace of God and all the prayers and blessings of all the people in my community and all over the world, we were able to grow together. And what she did was literally divert us all back into this path of love and service and oneness. And from that space, all of a sudden this book emerged. And it was as surprising to me as the fact that I'm out here sharing this message in the world, because in my mind, it's like, why on earth would God choose somebody like me? And this book just began to flow through me. And I realized that I had gone through whatever I had gone through or needed to go through in my life to be able to deliver this body of work into the world, which in fact is the reason why I incarnated in the first place. So the book is an opportunity for us to reconnect with our essence, to recognize who we are beyond our roles, our responsibilities, our expectations, beyond the dangled carrots of fame and fortune and notoriety, beyond all of these things, beyond our conditioning. It's an opportunity to reevaluate how transformation happens and how we can facilitate transformation, because I've discovered that it's not about the mind at all. Transformation happens at the level of feeling, and that we live in a feeling-based reality, and how we feel about ourselves is what life has the capacity to bring into our experience. And so in knowing that you're enough, it gives you access to feeling as though you're enough. And that's when all of a sudden you can start to receive all of the grace and all of the blessings and all of the goodness that wants to flow into your life. And so literally it's a blueprint and a journey as to how we've moved away from our connection. And also it's a signpost and a guide to support us in moving back into alignment and harmony at this point in human history.
So many people I know who are on a spiritual growth path. They may have been meditating, praying for years, but what I'm hearing a lot from people in my community and people in my circle is that they're not growing. They're stuck. It feels like they're doing what they know to do for living their spiritual life, but something isn't connecting. It sounds to me like what you're describing in the book and what you're going to be bringing to us here at Unity of Houston addresses that. Can you talk about that?
That's exactly right. So what's happened is that we have adapted in the presence of our spiritual expansion and evolution. And that's because we're purely exploring it through the lens of the mind. So
Right.
meditation has become about quietening the mind, right? It's become about a destination. Our practice in and of itself, in some cases, and I'm not saying this in every case, has become a badge of honor, that we
Mm.
wear, like I'm spiritual, which has become a secondary identity that we've created, primarily because our original God-given identity we felt wasn't good enough. And this
Right.
isn't anybody's fault. We just haven't understood as a community how transformation really happens. You see, so we've been doing everything that we've been told that we need to do. We've gone to every workshop, every seminar, we've participated in every event possible and read every book. But the problem is that the majority of the content that we're consuming in the transformational and personal development space, in the spiritual development space, hasn't come from a depth of personal experience or revelation. And that's why we're missing key ingredients as to what it truly takes to evolve. And so what I've discovered is that the soul exists at the level of subtle energy. The layer around the soul is the emotional layer. The layer around the emotional layer is the mental layer. Then there's the physical body. And then beyond that is the identity, which operates like a force field because we don't feel safe in the world. So transformation happens at the level of feeling. We have to transform at the level of emotion. So in India, we call these imprints in our subconscious samskaras, okay? And so we have this subconscious mind that's recording everything. It's always on. It's like a black box in an airplane. It just records everything. And that isn't the issue. The only issue with that is that we have events that we weren't mature enough to process or meet, or that we didn't have the courage to face. And what happens is we then spend an entire lifetime coping and adapting and surviving in the presence of them. Because until we can bring integration and resolution to all of these different aspects of us, we cannot evolve. And that integration and that evolution restores a sense of safety. And in the presence of safety, evolution can then occur. And so the piece that's been missing in the transformational paradigm, particularly in Europe and in America, is this deeper understanding of how transformation actually occurs. And what we have to do is cultivate the ability through the observation of oneself, through having the courage to feel what there is to feel inside of us, through coming into the profound acceptance of who we are, to bring all of these aspects that we've been repressing or suppressing into our hearts. And the more we can bring them into our heart, the more we can accept them and love them and meet them with a sense of appreciation, the more they transform. And then at that point, we're no longer recycling the same old energy or the same old experiences over and over again. So this is why people date the same person in different bodies. They'll get divorced and they'll break up, and all of a sudden it's like they have a new boyfriend or a new partner or a new girlfriend, and it's like, woohoo, surprise, it's me again, just in a different body. well, how does that happen? Well, it happens because we are the source of our experience.
Yes.
And all of these things that we're looking at and that we're dealing with and that we're reacting to are all us. And that evolution is about becoming responsible and accountable for everything. Because in oneness, life is happening as you are. It's happening exactly as you are. So if somebody's upset, it's important to take a look to see and to embrace that upsetness inside of you, okay? And this is what it means to end separation, literally. So what's been happening is, as a spiritual community, we've been getting angry, we've been getting upset, we've been getting frustrated, but instead of feeling that feeling because it's not okay, guess what happens? We repress it. And we keep repressing it and repressing it and repressing it. And we think that we can transcend it and evolve beyond it. And we can't. Because no matter how hard we try to push this down and stuff it and not be this and not think about this and not engage with this, it doesn't go away. The only time it goes away is when we have the courage to recognize that no part of us is a mistake, that every single aspect of us was created in perfection for us to evolve into the fullness of who we've come here to be, to emanate the love and the light that we are out into this world. And that's the time that we're living in. But that can only happen if we develop the courage to no longer bypass, to no longer deny, to no longer avoid, and to begin to be responsible and accountable for every single thing that's arising within us. At that point, we're creating the opening for integration. And once these aspects have been welcomed and embraced and loved, we are freed of them. You know, a great visual that works every single time, and it's a great description really, is I'm a father of 4 kids, so we go to the public like playground a lot, and guaranteed someone's falling over or scraping their knee. Something's happening, right? Because there are kids everywhere and there's stuff everywhere, slides and all kinds of things. And there is two kinds of parents. First kind of parent, child gets hurt, runs up to the parent says, "Why are you crying? I didn't raise you to be this way. What's wrong with you? You know, you're embarrassing me." Okay, and this poor child is like re-traumatized, right? Instead of being met, all of a sudden that child's been fundamentally rejected, and that opportunity for completion has been denied to that child. Then there's another kind of parent that gets down on their knees, meets the child at their level and says, "Where does it hurt? Let me kiss it better." And then all of a sudden, as soon as that happens, before you know it, regardless of what's going on, that child finds a sense of peace inside of itself and goes back to playing. And you see, what we have to do is cultivate the ability to be that second parent. And what we've done is that we have inadvertently become that first parent. Why am I thinking these thoughts? Stop it. Why am I feeling these feelings? These feelings are not okay. I'm contaminating my reality by feeling these feelings. Why am I having these desires? Why am I, hyper-focused on my physicality? Why am I doing all of these things? These things are not spiritual. They are not evolutionary. They are not supportive of my ascension. We're denying ourselves the very access that we need to know God, because our humanity is the doorway to our divinity. And until we can be with who we are at the level of our humanity, we can't truly know God. Because knowing yourself is knowing God, and knowing yourself is knowing every other human being. And the degree to which you're able to be with yourself is the degree to which you're able to contribute to bringing that greater presence and that vibratory potential of heaven on earth into being for every single person.
So amazing. I think so many of us have wrongly educated ourselves that we feel like when we're suppressing those feelings, we're being more virtuous, more spiritual. And what you're sharing is actually the opposite is true, that by embracing all those aspects of ourselves, it ushers us into the divine that we are. I have a question for you about how you work with individuals. I mean, there are so many courses out there, so many teachers and programs. Can you describe how you uniquely work with individuals and empower them to see themselves differently?
So I work with individuals in different ways, and the way in which I work with individuals has evolved as the needs of the community have evolved. And so when I first started, it was purely in a spiritual capacity to help people reestablish themselves in that divine connection and to end their experience of separation. And I'm happy to say that that is still the primary focus, regardless of what's happening in your life. I've come to know very clearly that the root cause of why we suffer is because there is some form of separation in our life in any area. And so my life has evolved to the point where now I mentor 7 people personally in a professional capacity, in relationship to their work, as well as on a personal capacity if they're going through something in their lives. I also offer people a year-long opportunity to be a part of a program called Impact. And that program consists of phone calls and masterminds, in-person exposure to me via Zoom calls like this, and also depending on the level at which you participate, phone calls and various other things. And then I've created this wonderful program called Perfect by Design, which is a monthly membership. And the purpose of that program is to provide people exposure to the energy and to be supported in coming into the embracing of their humanity so that they can evolve beyond survival. So the more integrated we are, the more we are open to really actualizing all of our potential. I think that where we've gotten stuck as a community is that we've been focusing on self-realization, but we've forgotten that unless that realized potential is embodied, it's not worth anything. So what we have to do is gradually get to a place where we can start to unwind all of this repetitious behavior, habits and patterning that have us denying who we are. And so Perfect by Design is a great entry-level way to immerse yourself in the energy, vibration, and frequency and wisdom required to once again be empowered in yourself, and then to hold that state inside of you for the benefit of your friends, your family, your co-workers, your colleagues, and everybody that you come into contact with.
Beautiful. So we're really excited. You were here at Unity of Houston, I think about 4 years ago. And I had known your work. Other friends of mine around the country had worked with you in different capacities. I'd seen you on Super Soul Sunday with Oprah Winfrey. But I was so so blown away by being in the same with you. Do you have a sneak peek or a teaser, something you could share with us here via this video interview, so that people will have an idea maybe what we can expect when you're here?
Yeah, let's do it. Why don't we just close our eyes for a moment and just take some breaths and just relax your body. And just allow yourselves to relax completely. What I would like more than anything is for you to know that you are divine. And so I'm just going to support you in remembering this truth in your heart. So just place your attention and your own awareness in the area of your heart. Just going to love your rage, your sadness, your depression, your fear, your insecurity, your anxiety. Your need to control, your need to understand, everything that you've personalized. And we're just going to love every form of limitation that you've brought into as the truth of who you are. Because who you really are is an infinite being with an infinite potential. Just allow yourself to stay connected to the breath. And I'm just going to lovingly ask that the divine just give you a tangible experience of the truth in this moment. That you see, hear, or feel this truth. That it is who you are and you are it. And we're just going to acknowledge that from this moment on, any and all forms of limitation or suffering or separation that you're carrying inside of you just begin to dissolve and fall away. Because by virtue of the fact that we're here as a part of this community, we know the truth, that we are light, that our essence is love, that we're here to be of service, that we have a purpose, and that there's never an accident that we end up where we end up, because wherever we are, God is. Love is. The truth is. So just take one more breath into the heart. And you may gradually bring your awareness back to the space that you're in. When you're ready, you may open your eyes.
Thank you.
I love you all so much. You know, I'm so excited to be coming back. I can't wait to share the fruits of this inner exploration and this journey with every single one of you. It's time to bring the good news and the good word to all of you, because you are all on the verge of just effortlessly, with absolute grace, falling into oneness. And I couldn't be more honored to spend time with you all. I love you all very much.
Thank you so much, Panache. So we look forward to seeing you in just a few weeks' time. Is there one thing that we can be doing to prepare ourselves for March 22nd, for that day we'll be with you?
Yeah, so what I would love more than anything is for you all to please begin to start accepting yourselves. Just begin to cultivate the ability to experience yourself as you are. Okay, so if you get angry, instead of stuffing it, repressing it, or trying to transcend it, welcome the experience inside and let it begin and end inside of you. You don't have to voice it. You don't have to act it out. What you can do is just relax into it. Welcome the feeling, welcome the discomfort, knowing that as you do this, literally you're opening up the doorway for integration to where this anger, this intensity of feeling can wash through you. Do the same with your sexual energy, do the same with your sadness, do the same with your fear, do the same with your mind. Just understand, please, that the same infinite intelligence that is unfolding all of the universe right now into greater levels of expansion made you, and that every single part of you is a part of your journey, and that all of these parts of you just need to be welcomed into your heart. As you so lovingly welcome each other, welcome all that you are into your heart. So between now and when I see you, please accept who you are. Know that you're not a mistake. Know that you're not broken. Know that you don't have to be perfect. Know that whatever's going on in any moment is an entry point into presence. And that the more you can embrace who you are as you are, the more you'll begin to tap into a peace that passes all understanding, until eventually you'll just get lost in that peace.
Thank you so much. So we look forward to seeing you here in Houston, Panache. It's going to be a beautiful day of reintegration of who we truly are.
Thank you, my friend. My love to everybody.